Howdy tubes, welcome back. So most of y'all probably know what we're doing today. If you don't, we're going to take this thing out and set it on the well and hook it up. Now, we just got through rebuilding this. First video, we overhauled the gearbox. Second video, we assembled it and rebuilt the wrist pins, tail bearing, saddle bearing, and then like I say, put it all together. Enough of that though. Got a couple links in the description if you'd like to watch that. First thing we got to do is cut some timber up. So I got the boards cut up. There's one that's about 7 foot, so the skid's about 5 feet wide. The long one will go in the front here. It'll be centered, roughly centered on this, right in front of the Samson post. This is where most of the weight sits. And then we got two that are narrower. They're about 4 feet, and they'll actually sit inside here, you know, from roughly here to there. One of the gearbox, one at the back. I'll explain the theory behind that in a minute. For aesthetic purposes only, I found a fan back there in my junkyard and I welded it to the crankshaft pulley. We're just going about 4 or 5 miles down the road, and I think what I'm going to do is just drive my forklift. I'm just going to pick that thing up and then just drive it out there. The little ones are really easy to set with a forklift. They're easier to set than with a truck, especially by yourself. And I think I'll just haul it out there, set it, and then drive this thing back and get my pickup and go out there and actually wire it up and everything. But I got a pair of gloves, a crescent, a key, and a shovel. Let's go see what we can get done. See, if I got a cop pull me over, all I gotta do is tell them I'm a farmer. All right, so we made it out here. Here's the well this thing's going on. It might not look at you, but all this, well, this clamp actually isn't. But this rod, polish rod, and the polish rod liner are both new. So what happened, this is actually the first unit that tore up. That was the instigated overhauling that one and the one that's on the other end of the lease. The one that was here is right over there. I don't know if you can see it. It's got a yellow head. I think it was the thumbnail picture or whatever, the last one. Anyway, what happened is it broke right here. Now this one's broke too, or has been broke. It's been welded up. But this top part of the skid broke. This bolt came out. I didn't put a bolt back in this because this is all welded. And the Samson post all went forward. So it here, that skid reared up like that, and so all this went forward. The beam and everything just like fell all forward. The bolts broke in the tail bearing. It just went all to pieces. Anyway, it bent all of this crap forward and ruined the liner and the polish rod, and the tubing sort of looked a little bent to me, but maybe it's all right. Anyway, this is the first one that tore up. It's the last one I'm going to get fixed. So while I'm here, the unit's going to go straight that way. And you can see the electricity. It pops up out of the ground out here. It's buried. It comes up in this seal tight. Unfortunately, I don't have a real good place to set you up out here. I think I'll clip you on the forklift. I'm going to throw the boards down, get them sort of where we want them, and then we'll set the unit over there, plop it down, and bump it around and line it up. I do too have a tripod. How about them taters? The unit has got to be lined up with a well. When, you know, like right now it's off. If you were to hook this up here, for one, it would run the bridle off of the head, but more importantly, it would be pulling over and putting a bind on the packing that's in this stuffing box, and that's going to wear your packing out on one side and cause it to leak. So it's very important to get that exactly right. I think this is about where the unit originally set, and looking at this, I think I'm going to pick it up and swing it around. Your rig typically will line up with the unit, and it'll be right out here. If we kick the back end around, that'll put us more this direction, get us more towards the road. Even though the unit right now is running perfectly north and south, I think I'm going to skew it just a little bit to make it easier to work on. Okay, so it looks pretty good. It looks relatively level. You know, we got the board here. The rest of the weight is sitting here. There's nothing actually sitting on this board. This is probably okay. We will run it a little while to determine if it's okay. But we probably have this stuff will settle, and it'll settle into this board. If it rocks or bounces too much, we'll have to do something else. You'll notice here it's still a little bit behind this polish rod. There's two reasons for this. The front always settles, and I can see a little bit of daylight right here. This will probably settle a little bit. As it settles, it'll effectively move the head towards the well. Battery died there. It'll effectively move the unit towards the well. The other thing is this still looks kind of bent to me. The hole that's in the ground straight, this looks like it's going uphill. I think it might have kinked the tubing slightly there at the wellhead. And if that's the case, you know, at later times after this is pulled again, when that's fixed, it'll be lined up. Being an inch out is not a huge deal. Also, if it's too far out, it's easy to come out here with a pickup or a truck or something, tie a chain onto it and bump it forward just a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is take the forklift. I'm going to get under the back of the beam, and I'm going to run the unit all the way down. Typically you would do this with a brake and the switch and another guy, but it's just me and we don't have electricity yet. And this will allow us to sort of estimate where the polish rod clamp needs to go. Okay, so I've got a problem here. I was afraid of this. So this is the polish rod clamp, and this is what actually holds the well, holds the weight of the rod string, I should say. And typically you you know, you adjust this to wherever it needs to be, tighten it up, and the bridle will go right here. And the weight sits between the bridle and the clamp. So the problem is this bridle is too long, the well is the unit's too short, the well's up too high, whatever, and there's not enough room. So what I'm going to do, and I don't like doing this, but what I'm going to do is we're going to move this all the way against the liner. This is known as a red head. We're going to move it against the red head, tighten this up. Need a cheater. This needs to be a whole lot tighter than I'm going to be able to get this, so we're going to have to go get the cheater. I also forgot a chain. I didn't bring anything with me. I need a chain, I need a pipe wrench. What I'm going to do is I want to try to come in here with the forklift and hook this and pick the rod string up with a forklift. This is pretty dangerous. I wouldn't recommend doing it. You need a chain or a truck with an eye that screws on the top. But I didn't bring a chain. All right, is that not the sketchiest thing ever? So I'm not a big, to be honest, I hate these type of bridles. They originally had a big casted piece, and they were sort of supposed to be used like the clamp, and this clamp onto here, but they're not strong enough, they don't work, and they usually bust and split here. And so what everybody ends up doing is taking a stack of giant washers and putting a bolt back here, and the big washer basically holds it on here. Let me get you down here where you can see. I hope this don't come loose and cut my finger off. Something just like that. See, if you're using the rod clamp, it's got more meat sort of to sit on here. But ultimately, that's it. Let's hook the electricity up. So I had a screw up, and I've got to tell you about what has just happened. So first off, this is one of those deals, you know, hauled it down to the forklift and had a nice pad, you know, everything's kosher, everything's great. And then the bridle's too long, and then I forgot to get a pipe wrench, and then I don't have a chain to pick it up, and I pick it up by the, you know, the bolt on the polish rod clamp, and everything gets just a little too sketchy. Well, anyway, it seems like when stuff like that happens and it starts going downhill, the best thing you can do is just go home, and that's what I should have done. So what happened? So I was thinking in my head I needed about 800 to 1,000 pounds of counterbalance weight, and I was judging that by, you know, 1,600 foot well. It's usually got 8 or 10 American weights on it. I was thinking these 100 pounds a piece. I'm thinking that's probably not right. And then I was thinking, small block Chevrolet, you know, that's going to be, you know, close to how much weight I need, you know, minus a couple 100 pounds. It's going to be close enough. You know, no big deal. And then I'll need, you know, whatever else I need, I can pile some more crap on it. Well, in hindsight, I think I probably need more like probably 1,200 or 1,300 pounds minimum, and that small block is about a third as much as I needed. Now, on a beam weighted unit, if it's extremely rod heavy, if you don't have any weights on it, you got to remember sort of the mechanicism that's going on here. You got an A-frame, which is a Samson post, and you've got a fulcrum. And if it's really, really rod heavy, when the gearbox tries to pick up on the beam, it can actually pick the back of the unit up. Well, anyway, I didn't show turning it on because I didn't have wire nuts to wire plug the electric motor, but I just twisted the wires together and turned the switch on off camera, just to watch it roll through. Well, it reared the back of the unit up because it's so rod heavy, went forward and bent my new polish rod and polish rod liner that I just had a rig put in here. So I'm gathering up I've got a bunch of Jensen weights. They're these little triangle cast iron deals. I think I got 300 or 400 pounds of them. I'm gonna go drill some holes in the beam and run all through and bolt them on there. I don't have a good tripod. It's not much to see. I'll show you when we get done in just a minute. So here's what I have done. I've taken these little, they're Jensen weights, they're little triangle shaped weights. They're made to go in a basket, but they've got a hole in them. And I've just stacked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the same on the other side, 10 of them. Those weigh about, I would guess, 50 or 60 pounds a piece, something like that. So that's like 500 or 600 more pounds of weight I've added to this thing, and it's still not enough. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I think I mentioned that you can see that yellow unit that's right over there somewhere. It's black with a yellow head. That's the one that came off this. Same weight, same unit, same everything. It's identical to this one, other than it's painted black. Same model. And I was guessing that I probably needed 800 to 1,000 pounds of weight. So I went over there and measured those weights, and they're 24 by 20 by an inch thick. You do the math, that comes out to 125 pounds each, times 6 is 750 pounds. So I feel like my guess was relatively close. Now that wasn't enough. It was short. It's about like this is now, but it was enough to run, and that's kind of what I was wanting to get with today. Now on that unit, these weights on an American are adjustable. It's a big leaf pack, and you can move them forward and back or take them on or whatever. And they were all the way up against here. So it had 750 pounds of weight that was like right here. I'm thinking that small block weighed 500 pounds, and maybe my big mess up, it may not be that heavy, but I've scooted it back significantly, and I was thinking that would probably be about equal to what I had over there. Not enough, but enough to run. And it obviously wasn't even close. And by the way, I had some other old junk weights off I think that was a Cabot maybe, on the other side of the lease. I picked them up and just threw them on the back of the skid. Some ballast on the back of these little units sometimes is not a bad thing. Sometimes you got to have it. Also, one thing to consider, this is an 18 American on a 1600 foot well, which is too much for this thing. It's overloaded. It needs a 25. This unit's good for, 1,000 foot. You get to 1600 and it's just really too much, and that's probably some of my problem as well. Anyway, so I've got what I thought was a 500 pound small block plus at least 500 more pounds of weight, which puts me at 1,000 pounds, and it still isn't enough. Anyway, but nonetheless, it's good enough to run. Let's go crank it up. Anyway, it's pretty rod heavy. It seems to be pulling it fine. As the well pumps up and the fluid level drops, it'll get harder to pick the rods in the pump up. But this would probably work, but I want to get it better than this. But anyway, you can see my screw up here. It's got the bend here in the polish rod liner. I'll just kind of show you how rod heavy it still is. See, it's pretty dang rod heavy. So the main reason for this this video was to talk about how to set one of these little units, and it sort of got lost in all my screw-ups and the problems that I've had. But I'd like to talk about that. That's the reason for the video. And I'd like to talk about why I've got a long board here and 2 short boards, and where they go and whatnot. Anyway, you've got to have on the front of your unit the Samson post here. These 2 pieces here are called a Samson post. We rebuilt the saddle bearing. This is where all the weight sits. And so if you back up and look at this thing, you've got the weight on the beam, and then you've got the head picking the rods up, and this is basically a teeter-totter, and all the way to that teeter-totter is going straight down. The whole gearbox and all this other mechanism is just to actuate the seesaw, you know, the teeter-totter, whatever you call them. And anyway, all the weight is right here. And so you've got to have a good foundation on the front of your unit. A little one like this, one board's enough. It's a great big unit, you need a couple boards. But anyway, you need a full width board. It goes all the way across your skid. Your skid needs a stout couple pieces of beam across the front. And what this does is this keeps the unit from rocking left to right. This needs to be level, reasonably level, left to right. You can throw, you know, shovel, you know, dig around it, throw a little dirt under it, whatever you need to do. That needs to be level. Now moving back, the next big place that these things always break, and you can see this one had broke there, we welded it up, is right into the gearbox. And the reason for that is people always have, you know, a good foundation in the front, and then they'll have a board at the back somewhere. And as this gearbox pulls and pushes on the beam to actuate it, this piece of beam here, actually this one's channel iron, sits here and flexes. And that flexing will always break them at a weak spot, and it's usually right behind the Samson post. You know, you've got flex come back from the Samson post in the gearbox, and they'll break. So you need a good foundation on the front, and you need most of the weight of the unit actually sitting under the gearbox, so that the back of it just sort of dangles, because all the work is done right here. At the back, I've got a board, and all that basically is, it's got a little bit of tension. It's worked out pretty well. I had a 2x4 out here I threw on top of that board, pick up some space. That's just to keep the back from bouncing, and the back bouncing effectively does the same thing as you know, flexing it here in the gearbox. It's just going to flex it as this bounces. You don't want any movement. And this actually turned out really well. You usually can see movement, and this is absolutely flat and smooth as could be. Now, the next thing, the reason these boards don't come out past the edge here is always what happens. Your weight's in the middle, and these boards will settle, all this will sink, and you'll end up with a board pushing up on the outside of the skid. It'll be pulling up on this channel iron, and of course it flexes, and the first thing it does is it breaks this weld here, or it'll break out, it'll actually break the skid out. So the weld won't break, it'll break like a pie, you know, a circle out with a piece of pipe. The unit that came off of here, I did not set. This well was drilled, I think, in 2012 or 2008 or something. Maybe I bought it in 2012. But it was I didn't set it. It was set by a bunch of people that know what was going on. Nice people, I'm not making fun of them. But they had cross ties that went all the way across in about 5 or 6 places, and it just broke it all over. It broke, you know, this was broke here, it was, pipe was broke, you know, the skid was broke. That's what actually started this. The skid broke all the way through and cratered. This was all broke off, and the sides were basically just flopping. But anyway, that's what you need to do. You know, the whole idea is to have no flex anywhere in your skid. You know, you don't want any rocking, anything like that. And as far as that goes, with as little preparation as I had in this, just brought it here and tossed it on the ground. It looks absolutely superb. So after all my troubles today with the stupid weights and screwing this up, it just dawned on me what the problem is. So I started to say, I've been thinking this was an 18. This is an 18 American, a D18. And I explained in a previous video what that means, but the 18 is the torque output of the gearbox in thousands of inch-pounds. This is an 18 gearbox, arms, bearings, skid, everything, except the beam. The beam is off of a 25, and I was noticing the head looked taller, but it's an older unit, and I wasn't real sure. A 25 looks exactly the same. If you look at them, it's really hard to tell the difference, except the skid is just a little bit wider, the gearbox is just a little bit wider, but the shield, the wrist pins, all that stuff all look exactly the same. I'm not sure if it is exactly the same, but it looks exactly the same. A 25 though has a longer distance between the saddle bearing and the head, even though this distance is the same. about 6 inches. I wouldn't measure it actually. It looked like it was 6 inches longer. You know, the other saddle bearing is like right here. It makes the weight less effective. So on a 1600, you have to have more weight on a 25 than you do at 18 to balance them. I hope that makes sense. I know that might be a little bit confusing. But anyway, that's what the deal is. This has got a longer stroke because it's got a longer beam on it. Who knows when it was put on there? It might have cratered. It's also possible somebody might have done that. I didn't actually know they would interchange as far as bolt holes being the same. Apparently they will. Somebody might have put a 25 beam on it because they wanted the, you know, the longer stroke. Anyway, I probably have got, you know, 1,100 pounds of weight on this thing, and it's not enough, and that's why I was thinking I only needed about 1,000 because that other had 750. That all makes sense. Got an idea. That didn't work very good. If that stays up there, I'm just gonna leave it. It's supposed to rain tonight. Maybe it'll rain and just sit up. All right, on that note, I'm done. All right, I got you on my cell phone. You got to get a half mile away to get it all in view here. But it looks good. This is, let's see, third day, fourth day, third day. This third day it's been running, third full day. All this is looking good, real smooth. I had one bolt came out of it. I think it might have been loose though. I think we took it out when we welded that crack up. But everything's looking good. I think the well's just pumping down. You can just got a pound right there, a couple inches down. Well's got a little oil on it. It probably looks a lot oilier in the picture than in reality, but definitely making some oil, which is what we're after. Anyway, looking good. Appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, and catch you on the next one.